Blood soaked through 6 stretchers at once, and the trauma bay doors slammed open to reveal a nightmare no single nurse should ever face alone. The senior surgeon looked at the chaos, looked at the young nurse standing frozen by the supply cart, and said the words that would follow her for the rest of her career, "Take them, they're already gone anyway." It was meant as a joke, a cruel dismissal from a man who had given up before the fight even began. Nobody in that hospital believed she would still be standing in 58 minutes. Nobody believed any of them would. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in people who refuse to give up when everyone else already has, hit like on this video, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Midnight Tales so you never miss a story like this one. Her name was Renata Cole, and she had been a trauma nurse for 11 years, long enough to know the difference between a hard night and an impossible one. This was impossible. 6 Navy SEALs had been brought in after a helicopter crash during a training exercise gone wrong, and the injuries were the kind that textbooks warned you about but nothing ever truly prepared you for. Crushed chests. Internal bleeding. A leg barely attached above the knee. The hospital was understaffed that night. Half the surgical team pulled onto a highway pileup across town, and the senior surgeon, exhausted and out of patience, had taken one look at the 6 broken bodies and decided the math didn't work in anyone's favor. He handed her the chart, told her the assignment was hers, and walked away shaking his head, already certain of the outcome. Renata stood there for exactly 4 seconds, staring at 6 men who had spent their lives running toward danger so that strangers could sleep safely at night, and something in her chest hardened into resolve. She had lost her younger brother 2 years earlier, a Marine who never made it home from his final deployment, and in that instant these 6 strangers on gurneys became something more than patients to her. They became a debt she intended to pay. She rolled up her sleeves, called for every spare set of hands she could find, and began. The first 10 minutes were pure triage, brutal and fast, sorting the dying from the merely wounded, deciding who could wait and who could not wait even one more breath. One SEAL, a broad-shouldered man named Marcus with a collapsed lung, was turning a shade of blue that no amount of training could make routine to witness. Renata's hands moved on instinct, needle decompression, chest tube, oxygen, her voice steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Somewhere behind her, a second man began seizing from blood loss, and she barked orders to a young orderly who had never worked a scene this severe, guiding him through compressions with a calm she did not actually feel inside. By the 20th minute, the room had become something close to organized chaos. Renata had recruited a janitor to hold pressure on a wound because there simply weren't enough trained hands, and she had talked a terrified intern through suturing a leg wound over the phone from 3 feet away because she could not physically be in 2 places at once. Sweat mixed with blood on her forearms. Her scrubs were soaked through. And still, one by one, she moved between the 6 men, checking pulses, adjusting drips, whispering words of encouragement that she was not certain any of them could even hear. "Stay with me," she told each of them in turn, "not on my watch, not tonight." At the 30-minute mark, the youngest of the 6, a SEAL barely 24 years old with a wife and newborn daughter waiting at home, coded. His heart simply stopped, the monitor screaming its flat, endless tone into the room. Renata felt something inside her crack, not from fear but from sheer refusal, and she began compressions with a force that surprised even the doctors who had wandered back in to see if the joke assignment had already failed. She counted out loud, she cried out loud, and on the 4th round of compressions, the monitor stuttered back to life. The room exhaled as one. Nobody was laughing anymore. Word began to spread through the hospital that something extraordinary was happening in that trauma bay. Nurses from other floors quietly slipped in to help without being asked. A retired combat medic working night security abandoned his post to assist with wound packing, moving with the practiced calm of a man who had done this before in far worse conditions. The senior surgeon who had walked away found himself standing in the doorway again, this time not shaking his head but watching in something closer to disbelief, as a woman he had dismissed as an afterthought orchestrated the survival of 6 men against odds that should have crushed them all. By the 45th minute, 5 of the 6 SEALs had been stabilized enough for transport to surgery, their vitals holding steady under Renata's relentless watch. The 6th, an older team leader named Grant with the worst of the internal bleeding, remained the most fragile, his blood pressure sliding no matter what they tried. Renata refused to let him go. She held his hand for one precious moment amid the chaos, leaned close, and told him that his team needed him, that his family needed him, that she was not finished fighting for him yet. Something in her voice, raw and unshakable, seemed to reach him even through the haze of shock, and his pressure began, slowly, agonizingly, to climb back towards stable. Please, if this story is moving something inside you right now, take a moment to comment a single word that describes how you're feeling, because it means more than you know to hear from you. At the 58-minute mark, the last of the 6 men was wheeled toward the operating room, Grant's stretcher rolling through the doors with Renata walking alongside it until the very last possible second, refusing to let go of his hand until the surgical team physically took over. She stood in the empty, blood-streaked trauma bay afterward, alone for the first time in nearly an hour, her legs finally giving out beneath her as she sank onto an overturned equipment crate. The adrenaline drained from her body all at once, leaving behind only trembling hands and tears she had not allowed herself to shed while the 6 men needed her strength instead of her grief. The senior surgeon who had handed her that impossible assignment as a bitter joke walked back into the room, and for the first time that night, he did not speak with dismissal. He simply stood there, silent, taking in the scene of a woman who had refused to let 6 strangers become 6 statistics. Every nurse, doctor, orderly, and janitor who had been pulled into that 58-minute battle stood quietly around the room as well, none of them finding the right words, because sometimes silence says more than applause ever could. All 6 SEALs survived that night, every single one of them, a result that defied every statistical expectation anyone in that hospital had walked in with. Weeks later, when Marcus and Grant and the others were well enough to be discharged, they gathered in the hospital lobby, still bandaged, still healing, and asked to see the nurse who had refused to let them die. When Renata walked in, expecting nothing more than a quiet goodbye, all 6 men rose to their feet and saluted her, the same gesture they would offer to no one but their own brothers in arms. It was the kind of moment that changes a person permanently, the kind of moment that reminds an entire hospital staff why they chose this impossible, beautiful work in the first place. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, share it with someone who could use a reminder that one person's refusal to give up can change everything, and subscribe to Midnight Tales for more stories like Renata's. Somewhere out there tonight, someone else is being handed an impossible assignment, and maybe, just maybe, they will remember this story and decide to fight anyway.